Joel. How's it going?
Tracy, always nice to see you. How are you today?
I'm good. It's great to catch up with you again, especially after the whirlwind that was CES. I'm not sure how you've already made it to Vegas and back. I'm still recovering from the holidays, but I'm glad that you did because there was a lot of news surrounding ad tech and CTV specifically at the event. So to start, I am just curious, were there any major themes at this year's CES or needle moving announcements that kind of caught you off guard?
Yeah, I think there's a little bit of each. As far as what just completely blindsided me and maybe some of the industry was Disney's buyout, quasi buyout, merger, whatever we're going to classify this as, of Fubo, and then obviously the implications on venue. So that was certainly very interesting. If you follow Fubo stock, you certainly enjoyed that as well. But then, as far as themes from CES, this may sound almost like Groundhog Day from last year, but AI, duh. Almost every logo and every brand, almost sort of uncreatively, just looked like they slapped AI on the back of everything that they were doing. And sometimes that felt more tangible than others. But I think the other theme that stood out were RMNs or retail media networks, which are also almost a cliche at this point, yet nevertheless just incredibly abundant throughout the experience of CES.
Yeah, I mean, retail media networks have been in the news a lot lately, the ad tech news cycle. I've seen you posting about it, obviously, and Walmart just completed their acquisition of Vizio, which we all know was not about Walmart getting into the TV hardware game so much as growing out and making their ad tech ecosystem a lot more sophisticated, which obviously makes sense since Amazon pretty much wrote the playbook with their data integration across Prime Video, Amazon Marketplace, their DSP, and even Fire TV devices. So I would love to hear what are your specific takeaways from CES in regards to retail media, and how can advertisers navigate such a dynamic space?
Totally. Um, I think I can answer that first with an analogy. Now, this is probably the most appropriate for those of you all who were at CES, specifically at the ad tech complex at Aria and Cosmopolitan, but I would compare the state of retail media today to the Sky Suite elevator situation at Aria during CES. And like I said, if you were there, you know what I'm talking about. Just an absolute pushing and shoving, standing room only mess. Everyone's trying to get on a very finite number of elevators. And what we ended up having was just pandemonium, but at least in a fun kind of amusing way. Put another way, I think the state of retail media networks is kind of a madhouse. Virtually every retailer with even an iota of shopper data has entered the market as an RMN, and of course we know why. This data is the proverbial sawdust on the wood shop floor, and there's incredible opportunities to monetize it. Myself and strategists look at retail media data as kind of second party data where it's less cookie reliant, certainly more interoperable with our new identity currencies. So there's incredible reason and justification for so many retail media providers to enter the space. Yet, nevertheless, at this point in time, it's still so nascent that there's a complete lack of congruence, complete lack of consistency, certainly no standardization. And so, outside of the let's call them major players who've already entrenched themselves. Of course, the aforementioned Amazon, probably Walmart, maybe we could fit Kroger in there. It feels like a free for all.
Mhm.
So, second half of your question was, how's an advertiser navigate? I would say that my answer to this is what it's always been, which is to test, and to continue to test. So I would say more tangibly, find the retail media source and data taxonomy that best aligns with your brand and your KPIs. Push the data for activation into the DSP of your preference. Test against your own first party data. Test against third party, more commoditized, potentially cookie based third party data, and then see what floats to the top. And if you repeat this exercise, a dozen or so times, I think you'll start to find what matters.
Yeah, so it sounds like it's pretty crowded. There's good opportunity there, but ultimately it's going to be kind of nuanced to each brand, and they're going to have their own learning curve with the state of retail media right now.
Until such a time that either a DSP or some other DMP comes along and is able to centralize and standardize this, that's exactly what we're going to have to do in the space.
Okay, cool. So also somewhat related to the Walmart Vizio news is the fact that we are seeing a lot of the low margin TV manufacturers kind of seeing a way to capture more value by stepping into the ad tech game. And one way we're seeing conversation about this is with TV manufacturers now investing in their own operating systems. We have some people like Alan Woke talking about the OS wars. But I would love to hear how this played out at CES, given that, hardware is often exciting eye candy at these trade shows, but a lot of the innovation is more of the software based developments. So is it still kind of the same landscape with Roku and Amazon dominating CTV, or what's your take on that?
It's such a good question and point, Tracy. I think when you think of CES, at least when I think of CES, I think of the crazy gadgets, and the bendable TVs and the funny robots. But you're absolutely right. These TV OS wars are fundamentally what kind of underpins this bridge from tangible yet low margin OEM television and other kind of device manufacturing into the more appealing potentially, but also the more blue sky oriented ad tech space where margins are higher, everything is more scalable. And ultimately, I would say that again, to your point, we've seen some of these players potentially with a bit more of an ad tech background enter the ad tech space at CES with a much greater presence years ago, right? Amazon, Roku, two very notable ones. I would say this year we observed Samsung and LG in particular, really kind of embracing that bridge from tangible OEM hardware into more, ethereal ad tech oriented monetization of all of us that embrace those devices and that hardware. So it's really becoming a very interesting unified approach where those that have hardware want to get into the ad tech space and for very good reason. And obviously, what that creates is as close to a closed loop of activation and measurement. And that becomes the most probably meaningful to marketers when you're able to achieve that degree of attribution and measurement and targeting.
Okay. Yeah. And it makes sense because I know you recently had a webinar with Tony from LG Ad Solutions talking about some of the ways they were implementing AI into their operating system and whatnot. So obviously to that end, no conversation is complete these days without touching on AI. And you have been critical in the past of the just AI washing, where, as you said at the start of this conversation, people are just adding that on to any value prop. So I'm curious, is applications of AI in connected TV advertising still very nascent, or are you starting to see some real life applications of this AI frenzy?
Can I say both? Because I
Yeah.
definitely still think that this is very nascent. It's opaque at best today. We still have a number of players racing toward some inevitable finish line and winner, and no one can tell you who that's going to be yet. Nevertheless, it does feel somewhat more tangible, right? It does feel like large language models and how they're able to ingest, digest, and regurgitate meaningful information has become more meaningful in the space. Now, again, we are still so far from anything that would, in my eyes, change the world, despite the fact that we're seeing, DSPs enter the space saying, hey, we now have LLMs that will help reduce or improve XYZ. But in my estimation, in my experience, in my observation, we are still in the first inning of this whole game.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, it has just been a couple years anyways, but it's good to hear that there is some progress being made.
Totally.
Awesome, Joel. Well, I really appreciate it. I learned a lot from this conversation. So thanks for filling us in, and I look forward to catching up with you in the future about more CTV developments.
Always looking forward to it. Great to see you, Tracy.